Great Depression. The Great Depression was an economic slump in North America, Europe, and other industrialized areas of the world that began in 1929 and lasted until about 1939. It was the longest and most severe depression ever experienced by the industrialized Western world. The U.S. economy had shown signs of depression long before the last straw in 1929. The early warning signs first came in the agricultural sector, as farmers continued to produce more and more food due to technological advances like the tractor. Farm prices dropped. Yet, farmers reacted in the traditional manner and boosted production even further, which caused more severe plummeting of prices. As a result, many farmers who were already in debt, borrowing money for seed and paying it back when their crops came in, had to default on their loans, while banks, on the other hand, would foreclose on the small farms, leaving the farmers' families both homeless and unemployed. To make matters worse, the central part of the nation was hit with a terrible drought which, along with years and years of overgrazing, turned that portion of America into what was called the Dust Bowl. In the economic area, the prosperity of the 1920s was unevenly distributed among the various parts of the American economy. Farmers and unskilled workers were noticeably excluded, with the result that the nation's productive capacity was greater than its capacity to consume. In addition, the tariff and war debt policies of the Republican administrations of the 1920s had cut down the foreign market for American goods. Finally, during the economic boom of the Roaring Twenties, the average American was busy buying automobiles and household appliances and speculating in the stock market, where big money could be made. Those appliances, however, were bought on credit. The imbalance between the rich and the poor, combined with the production of more and more goods and rising personal debt, could not be sustained. On Black Tuesday, October 29, 1929, the stock market crashed, triggering the Great Depression, the worst economic collapse in the history of the modern industrial world. During the next 3 years, stock prices in the United States continued to fall, until by late 1932 they had dropped to only about 20% of their value in 1929. Besides ruining many thousands of individual investors, this precipitous decline in the value of assets greatly strained banks and other financial institutions, particularly those holding stocks in their portfolios. Many banks were consequently forced into insolvency, which, combined with a general and nationwide loss of confidence in the economy, led to much reduced levels of spending and demand and, hence, of production, thus aggravating the downward spiral. The result was drastically falling output and rising unemployment. By 1932, U.S. manufacturing output had fallen to 54% of its 1929 level, and unemployment had risen to between 12 and 15 million workers, or 25 to 30% of the workforce. The Great Depression quickly turned into a worldwide economic slump owing to the special and intimate relationships that had been forged between the United States and European countries after World War I. The United States had emerged from the war as a major creditor and financier to post-war Europe, whose national economies had been greatly weakened by the war itself, by war debts, and, in the case of Germany and other defeated nations, by the need to pay war reparations. So, once the American economy slumped and the flow of American investment credits to Europe dried up, prosperity tended to collapse there as well. At least in part, the Great Depression was caused by underlying weaknesses and imbalances within the U.S. economy that had been obscured by the boom psychology and speculative euphoria of the 1920s. The Depression exposed those weaknesses. Prior to the Great Depression, governments traditionally took little or no action in times of business downturn, relying instead on personal market forces to achieve the necessary economic correction. But market forces alone proved unable to achieve the desired recovery in the early years of the Great Depression. And this painful discovery eventually inspired some fundamental changes in the United States economic structure. After the Great Depression, government action came to assume a principal role ensuring economic stability in most industrial nations with market economies.